Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and today I have a project updates video for you. We have a little bit of knitting, one crochet project, and oh, I do have a sewing project. I thought I didn't, but I'm gonna go grab that real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, I grabbed the project. I needed to make sure I got it now, otherwise I will definitely forget later. Welcome to this creative space. The way I usually organize my videos here is we start with an intro welcome section. I usually talk about the weather because I'm from the Midwest and we like to talk about the weather. And then we go into finished projects. Sometimes that includes what I am wearing, and then works in progress. And then an eats and reads section where I talk about books that I've been reading, things I've cooked lately. And then sometimes there's a food for thought section where I share with you something that's been in my mind, on my heart. And we don't always get to those last two sections, just depending on time. It doesn't mean that I haven't been reading or cooking or baking or any of those things or thinking about things. For the sake of time, sometimes I just don't get to it. I do include links to the things that I talk about in the description box below this video. I use Ravelry for my knit and crocheted items. Sewn items are not logged on Ravelry. I include closed captionings on all of my videos here on YouTube. You click on that CC button. If I speak faster or slower than your preferences, YouTube also allows you to adjust the speed. I do occasionally put things up on the screen as well, either to correct myself or to provide additional information. And so if you are not looking at the screen and doing other things, you just might miss that information. Just putting that out there. So I am coming to you from the middle of July, year 2025 in Minnesota. And it has been about 6 to 7 weeks, I think, since my last project updates video. I have put out a few videos in that time, but not like a full-on project updates video. Our weather has been all over the place, from like mid 60s to mid 90s. I think we even hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but that might have been a record in like May, end of May. But so far, I think it's been more consistently, if you can use the word consistent for ever-changing weather, in the 60s to 90. And currently it is 65 degrees and raining, and that's why I have wool on. Otherwise, I would not be wearing wool if it was 90 degrees. If you've been here for some time, you will know that we love to garden in the gardening season, which for us is like May through early October. We've had a lot of beautiful flowers, and I shared with you some in the beginning. These are some of our dahlias and our hydrangeas. We have a few different varieties and they are just so beautiful. I love the color that they add to this season, and we can bring them inside and they last for quite some time. I would say at least a week, depending on the flower. I try to cut them very early in the morning. That's when they usually do the best for cutting and bringing inside. I think that's everything I wanted to say in the intro welcome section, so let's jump into the finished projects section, starting with what I am wearing. I am wearing the mini mock neck tank by Jessie Made Designs. I believe this is my 6th version of this tank top, and I might in the future do a roundup of all 6. They're all a little bit different. The yarns are different. I made a couple of modifications here and there. I've learned some things along the way. And so I think maybe in the fall, I'll pull all 6 out and share with you the differences and the things that I learned. I may or may not put them all on to show them because some of them are a little bit see-through, and so I don't want to be sharing that on the internet. But this one I'm wearing because it is not see-through, and I will tell you why. So I cast this on in March, finished it in June, so it took me about 3 months, but I didn't knit on it all the time. It was something that was easy to just throw in a bag and knit whenever I wanted to once that front section was done. So it is knit top down. Okay, let me not get ahead of myself. Start over. This is a tank top that is knit top down. So you cast on for the back, knit to the part where you would join to the front, then you pick up from the shoulders, knit the front sections on each side, I think. No, I can't remember. But anyway, you knit the front, then you join, and then you knit the body. So the body section is just round and round. There's no shaping unless you choose to add that. And so once I get to that join section, I can just throw it in a bag and take it for wherever, and I can pick it up and put it down without having to look at a pattern because it is just round and round stockinette. This pattern is $9 USD. It is size inclusive. It was published in June of 2023. The gauge is 24 stitches by 28 rows, but I have a different row gauge, which works in my favor because I need the armholes to be a little smaller than what it is in the pattern. And so with the tighter row gauge, it brings that armhole up a little bit. The pattern is designed to have negative ease, and the sizes available are to fit a chest measurement of 28 inches to 60 inches. That is not the finished circumference of the garment. The finished circumference is 23.5 inches to 55.5 inches, designed with 4.5 to 6.5 inches of negative ease at the full chest. And if you decide to change that, of course, other things will change in your fit, but feel free to do whatever works for you. Pattern recommends to use a fingering weight yarn, and the needles suggested are a US 4 for the main fabric, which is 3.5 millimeter. The ribbing is recommended to be knit on a US 2 or 2.75 millimeter needles. Of course, if your gauge changes, you may need to adjust the needle size to get the desired gauge and the desired fit. Yarn requirements are listed out for each size, and the techniques in the pattern use knitting in the round, increasing, German short rows, and blocking. The yarn I used is by Woolens and Nosh. This is a pretty plump fingering weight yarn. I would say it leans close to sport weight. It is a superwash targhee at 90% targhee, 10% nylon, 3-ply, 465 yards for 115 grams. The colorway is hibiscus, and it is very plump, and I specifically chose this yarn to knit this because I've actually done it another time from a different dyer in the same base. And I like that even though there's negative ease, it is not see-through. And that is because of the yarn being more plump, and it fills in the gaps in the stitches. And so it doesn't end up being see-through even though there is negative ease. I'm going to, I think, back up here, so hopefully you can get a better view of the entire tank top. I have it worn over jeans right now. I did lengthen mine significantly because the pattern has it very cropped. So mine go to the top of my high-waisted jeans. These jeans go up to my belly button, and the band of the tank top just covers the band of the jeans. And the armhole depth you can see here is pretty high. In the pattern, it would be like probably an inch or so lower than this. I did modify it to take out a couple of rows in the front and the back before joining, which brought it up slightly higher. Just knowing that it might stretch out with wear over time, I didn't want the armhole depth to continue sagging down too far. And then I joined in the round. I don't believe I did any increases in this one for waist shaping, partially because I was going to need pretty much every gram of yarn, and I did. I started actually with 121 grams, and that's about 489 yards. And I finished with 0.92 grams remaining. I probably could have knit one more round, but that would have been cutting it super close, like to maybe a couple inches left of yarn, so I'm glad I stopped when I did. One more round wouldn't have made that big of a difference in the length, and I would have been annoyed if I ran out of yarn. So this works out really well. I did change the needle size for my neckband. I used a US 3 instead of a US 2 just to make it not as tight. And I did an Italian sewn bind off for my neckband and for my body hem. It's plenty stretchy, but also looks nice and tidy. And then the armband ribbing is knit as you go, so there's not a lot of adjustments you can do there after the fact. However, on another tank, I did thread in elastic thread along the armband to cinch it in a little, because on that one, I didn't omit any of the rows, and so my armhole depth was too deep for my liking on that one. I mentioned the body I extended significantly. I want to say like maybe 5 inches from what the pattern recommends, and that way it is at the length that I will wear. I typically knit these tanks to be under layers, so I don't like to wear full-on wool in the summer. It is just not comfortable for me. I start feeling prickly as soon as I feel a little bit hot, and so I knit these tanks to be worn as underlayers in the other 3 seasons. I like to wear it under a linen top or a flannel top, or even under other sweaters and cardigans, and so that's typically how I like to style it. So I think when I do my roundup of this pattern, I will showcase it with all those other things that I plan on wearing it with. But today I wanted to show it to you without something over it so you could see the whole thing. I hopefully showed you the back too. Let's see. I feel like the shaping The short row shaping is done really nicely in the shoulders, so it sits nice and flat. And the neckline is picked up to do the ribbing, and you could pick up more stitches or less stitches depending on the fit that you want. I can't remember if the pattern gives you a stitch count. It may not. So that is just up to you. I don't remember exactly. It's been a little bit since I finished it, so I don't remember all the details, but I like how it fits. I like the wide straps on the shoulders. And I think the only thing that I was concerned about, even from when I first started the pattern, was the armhole depth and the adjustability of that. But since I've knit 6 of them, I have a better idea of how I prefer that fit and how it comes out. And it also depends on the yarn that you use. If you use a really drapey yarn, you might have to adjust the armhole depth a little more. If you use one that is more elastic and bouncy, you may not have to adjust it as much. Again, depends on what you are looking for, but because I wanted this raised up, my tighter row gauge helped me out a lot, and then using a yarn that has a lot of elasticity also helps a lot because then it doesn't droop down so much. So I picked the adult small, which is the size recommended for my full bust measurement, and then I fit within the negative ease recommendations, and I think I've knit the same size for all of the ones that I've done. I've just changed up other things. So this is the mini mock neck tank by Jessie Made Designs. Okay, before I change into my next finished project, I just want to share with you the crocheted one that I did recently. This is a plant pot coaster that I improvised, and I had this yarn since I think 2018. It's 100% acrylic. It is Mandala Thick and Quick by Lion Brand. The colorway is Begonia. And it comes in 150 grams and 87 yards. So this yarn does change color on its own. There's this like tealy color, a blue color, a minty color, brown, and then this like golden yellow color that has specks of all the other colors in it. This is a machine wash and dry yarn. I thought that was perfect for a plant coaster because sometimes dirt and water gets on it. So if I need to throw it in the washing machine, it's totally fine to do so. And the reason I make these plant pot coasters is because some of these ceramic pots have really rough bottoms. And yes, I could put on those like felt square things that stick on to the bottom, like for chairs and things like that. But I have the skills to make a coaster and it's fun and pretty, so why not? So I used a K hook, which is a 6.5 millimeter hook, and it is a smaller size than recommended for this weight of yarn. However, I wanted it dense and squishy, and so that's what I did. I did a magic ring in the middle, started with 6 single crochets, and then just evenly spaced it out with each round. And it's mostly evenly spaced. Some of the counts got off a little, but it's fine. So then I just kept doing that until I got to the diameter of the pot, and then I switched to double crochets and did the scalloped edging. If you are not familiar with crochet terms, maybe look up a pattern or something like that that can explain it better to you. Again, I just improvised it. I've been crocheting since I was a little kid, and I feel like crochet is much easier for me to kind of just make things up. Plus, you only have 1 live stitch at a time, so if I mess up, I can just rip it out and start from wherever I wanted to start over from, and it's really fast. And since I did want something cushy, I felt like crochet was the way to go for this, and it fits perfectly under the plant pot. I will hopefully share a picture here on the screen if I remember to put it up so you can see how it fits under the pot. This used 108 grams of yarn, so as you see from the cake here, I still have some remaining, and so if there's another pot that needs another coaster, I can make some more. And I think I have one more skein of this yarn as well, so if I need to make more matching ones, I can definitely do that. I made a note to mention some of the make-alongs that are going on currently that coincide with some of my projects, but I forgot to mention it earlier. There is the Summer Stash Bash Mal. I'll put the hashtag here on the screen. It runs from May 23rd to September 1st, 2025, and it's hosted by the sisters at Table 10 Podcast and the friends Knitting Up North with Jen and Karina. And so you can check out their socials and their YouTube channels to find out more about their make-along. But my plant pot coaster goes with that make-along, as well as I think a couple of other ones that I have here to my side. Also, my plant pot coaster qualifies for the Flower Power Mal. Again, the hashtag will be here on the screen, and that runs from July 1st to the 31st, 2025. And that is hosted by Christy at Mamie Grace Designs and Yeji at Ann Made Co. Again, you can check out their socials and both of their YouTube channels to find out more about that make-along. Okay, I am back with an outfit change. This is the Relaxed Tee by Amy Sure Makes. I started this in June and just recently finished it. It is middle of July and I love this tee. I used a new to me yarn which can be purchased in Amy Sure's web shop, and this yarn was gifted to me as yarn support to knit this pattern. So this is my third Relaxed Tee, but don't tell the second one because I haven't finished my second Relaxed Tee yet, and that's because that one is knit to be full-length sleeves and full-length body, and it's in a Surrey Alpaca Merino blend, and I just won't be wearing it anytime soon, so I just don't have any hurry to finish it, and so that one will get finished probably sometime in September, but as of now, I finished my third one before finishing my second one. This is a pattern that is knit top down. It is a compound raglan. A compound raglan means that the rate of increases from the neckline to the armpit is not a 1-to-1 ratio, and so it does change depending on where it sits on the body and for different sizes. So it's a little more of an S curve, which creates a really nice fitting shape that drapes on the body without having a bunch of extra fabric in the armpit area. I really like this type of construction, and also something else that I have come to really like is a neckline that doesn't start with joining in the round, but you do the short rows and the increases simultaneously until you get to a certain point when you join in the round. And I feel like that creates a nicer crew neck or even slightly scoop neck. I don't feel like it's quite as deep as a scoop neck, but certainly you could make it that way. It just sits lower in the front than the back, which accompanies the shape of a body. Whereas I feel like when you join in the round right from the beginning and you still do the short row shaping to raise the back of the neck, sometimes the front still rides up a little bit for me. And so I just feel like this type of construction and this type of shaping just fits really well. It also accommodates for a little more leeway in like making those changes to make it lower in the front or adjust other increases here and there because it isn't joined in the round yet. I chose the second size for this pattern, size B, which finishes at a 37.25 inch chest. I did omit the A-line shaping because that size is on the bigger end of what's recommended in the pattern, and so it actually gives me still positive ease if I knit it to my hips or slightly past my hips, whereas if I picked the first size I would want to do the A-line shaping because otherwise I think I would have negative ease at the hips or maybe just zero ease. And so since I picked the second size, I didn't need to do that, so I omitted the A-line shaping. The gauge of this pattern is 24 stitches by 32 rows, and that is based on a fingering weight yarn with a main needle size of a US 4 3.5 millimeter needle. There are two smaller needles also recommended in the pattern, a US 2 2.75 millimeter for the neck and a US 3 3.25 millimeter for the sleeve cuffs and the body hem. Of course, you may have to change needle sizes to get the gauge that is recommended in the pattern, and depending on what yarn you use, your gauge may vary. I use the needle sizes recommended in the pattern in addition to adding in a larger needle, I think a US 6 maybe, which is a 4 millimeter, to do all my bind offs because my bind offs tend to be tight and I find it easier to keep an even tension if I just go up a couple of needle sizes from the size I was using prior to binding off, and that way I make sure that it is still stretchy but doesn't flare out, and I don't have to try to bind off loosely but like evenly throughout each stitch. So that just is something that works for me. This is the Wandering Flock yarn, and it is an indie dyer. This base is 35% organic cotton, 30% mulberry silk, 20% linen, and 15% baby alpaca. It's 100 grams, sport weight at 328 yards. This main color is lilac. It's like a very icy lavender color. And then the contrast color I picked Poppy, which is a very orangey red. This yarn is so drapey and so soft. Even in hank form, it's like flopping over. So from that, I can gauge that it's going to be pretty drapey, and it definitely is. I will say that there was some fluff coming out when I was winding the yarn into a cake, and then while knitting with it, every once in a while there'd be like a tiny little, I don't know if fluff ball is a word, because it seemed like a pill, but on the fabric it didn't look like it was pilling. So I think it was just the lintiness of it being emitted. I don't really know, probably from the cotton content, but when I look at the fabric itself, it isn't pilly. I only recently finished this, so I can't tell you at all how it wears, but I can say it's next to skin soft, and I don't feel any prickliness. But again, it's only 65 degrees outside right now, so I don't know how it would feel in 75-degree weather, which is my cutoff for wearing any wool content. So I can't speak to how it would feel in hotter weather, but currently it feels very comfortable. I used all of my main color. I had gotten 2 hanks of the main color and 1 of the contrast, and my main color total was 202.82 grams, and I had 20 inches of yarn remaining. I do pretty meticulous yarn management because I want to use up the most of the yarn as possible if it is a special blend of fibers, because I'm not very likely to use it in another project with other fiber blends. I just try to use up as much of it as possible, especially if it's indie dyed yarn, which is at a higher price point. And so I calculated it out, how much I needed for the sleeves, for the cuffs, for the ribbing, for everything. I was able to get it down to less than a gram. 20 inches is a great finish line. The amount of contrast color I used was about 23 grams. So the remaining yarn for that, I'll either save in case I decide to purchase more of this yarn to knit something else and use that color in there, or I might knit it into something that's smaller, but we'll see where I go with that. I do love the color, and so I can definitely see myself using it again. So the one modification I made in the pattern is that there are these textured garter stripes in the pattern, and I decided to do a different color instead of that texture. And so I have these 2 round stripes, and then however many rows or rounds in between those. So I kept to the, I guess, pattern repeat, but I just changed up the texture for the contrast color. And I really like how it turned out. I feel like this looks very springy and summery. I also changed the sleeve length. I made my sleeves 1 inch longer than the pattern recommends. It's supposed to hit more like mid bicep, but I wanted it to go to elbow length. But I forgot to account for the fact that this yarn was going to be so drapey and relax a lot after the first wash. So when I tried it on before washing, it was going to be perfect. And then I forgot that it was going to grow, and so now it's slightly longer than I want it to be in the sleeves, only because it ends up bending a little in the elbow, and because this yarn has very minimal memory, it ends up getting kind of, I don't know, floppy in that area. And if it was just slightly higher, it wouldn't hit when I bend my elbow, because right now that's what it's doing. Hopefully you can see the fabric kind of gathering in my elbow crease. And had I not gone as long, I wouldn't even go as short as what it says in the pattern, but I think if I had just gone like ½ inch shorter, it wouldn't do that. And the other part that made it grow is the neckline. So my neckline relaxed quite a bit, which then lengthens my sleeve. So I'm going to show you, if I pull up on my neckband a little, it's going to pull up on my sleeve a little. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. So even if I pull it up ½ inch, my sleeve is going to come up ½ inch. So as a result of me washing it, everything relaxed, including the neckline. So the neckline went out a little bit, my sleeves went out a little bit, and so it ended up being slightly longer than anticipated. Now, whether or not I will rip back the sleeves and redo part of it is questionable. I'll probably just wear it for a bit and see how I feel and just see how the fabric behaves over time, because I want to know, is it going to keep stretching out? Is this kind of its maximum relaxing? I don't really know. And what happens with future washes? This is a hand wash fiber or yarn. This is a hand wash garment. And so I won't be putting it in the dryer to have it cinch back up like some of my other cotton or plant-based garments. I'm not envisioning this like shrinking up any smaller over time. We'll just see how it goes. It's fine. It doesn't bother me. It was just not what I intended for it to be. I intended for it to be elbow length, but not actually like be in my elbow. All right, on to the 4th finished project. This is a sewing one. So I have sewn ever since I was a little kid. My mom taught me how to sew. My maternal grandmother taught sewing in Taiwan. My mother-in-law sews. There are a lot of very creative people in my family and on my husband's side of the family. When my daughter said, "Hey, mommy, I want a twirly dress," I thought, okay, I can do that. So what I did was I pulled out my geranium dress pattern made by Ray, and I've had this pattern for a few years, and it is a great pattern because the sizing comes from, I think, baby through 12 years old, maybe, I think something like that. But I can't remember if there are two separate packs, like 0 to 6 and then like 6 to 12 or something like that. You'll have to look at the website. I'll link to it in the description box below this video. It is a paid for sewing pattern. So I followed the bodice for the geranium dress, but then I created a tiered gathered skirt. So basically you take the measurement at the end of the bodice, at the base of the bodice, and times that by 1.5 or 2. And then the next tier also times by 1.5 or 2. And then depending on the height of your child, you might want longer tiers or shorter tiers. I like the first tier to end past the butt because I feel like a seam area at the butt is just really uncomfortable. So I tend to go past that. And then the next one I measure based on how long she wants it to be. And she wanted a maxi length dress, which is fine by me. And I also know that the bodice tends to be slightly bigger in size than the age that it's for, at least for my kids. And so I know she's going to get a few years of wear out of this. So if I make the length longer, then even as she grows, it'll still be at a great length. So I'm going to show you what I did. I might have to move back a little. All right, here we are. Oh, this is so pretty. This is 100% linen, and I used 2 yards of the wide fabric. I think it's like 54 or 55 inches. I didn't use all of it, but I did use a lot of it. And the back, I have these heart cam snap buttons in an apple green color. And then the inside bodice lining, I used a neon green that may be familiar to you from my pants that I've made. I had to do a little bit of creative cutting, so the front part actually has 2 pieces instead of 1 because of how I had to cut it. And then this top part of the skirt is tucked in to this lining of the bodice, and then I hand sewed that down because I'm not very good at stitching in the ditch. If you are a sewist, you will know that term. Stitching in the ditch means you use your machine to stitch where this seam is. And if you're really good at it, it should be pretty invisible. I'm not very good at that, so mine would not be invisible. So I'm better at hand stitching it invisibly. So this is what it looks like up close. And basically you tuck that top of the gathered part into the lining and then stitch it down. So it's very comfortable. There's no weird rubbing in that part when the child is wearing it. She requested the snap buttons instead of regular buttons, which is fine by me because then I didn't have to mess with making buttonholes, which is fine, but this is much faster and much easier. There are inseam pockets in the first tier over here, and then here's the second tier on the bottom, and I just love it. It does go down to her ankles, and the bodice is slightly big. So for now, she can wear it with like a t-shirt or tank top underneath because of how gapey it is. But over time, for sure, I think she could be comfortable wearing it without a tank top or t-shirt underneath. So this is the geranium dress, and I am so pleased with how it turned out. And even better, she loves it so much, and it is twirling approved. We are on to the works in progress section. I'm going to try my best not to go into super detail into all of the numbers and things like that, only because I give a pretty thorough assessment of the patterns when I have finished the project, and I just feel like I'm repeating myself all the time. What I'm going to do is still show you my work in progress, but do my best to not go into too much detail. I know I've said that before, and I know I end up telling you all the details anyway because it just rattles out of my brain, but we're gonna see if I can do it. The first work in progress I'm gonna share with you is the Getty tee. I believe I shared this with you as a work in progress in my previous episode. I don't know if that was that early June or end of May, something like that. This is a pattern by Tanis Lavely, and this pattern was kindly gifted to me, and I am so excited to be making it. I do crochet and I knit, and so Tanis has been releasing a set of patterns that include both crocheting and knitting, and it just warms my heart. It is so fun. Ready? Here we are. I'm going to show you the shoulders. That's where the crochet is. Basically, you create like a saddle shoulder type of situation with 4 granny squares, and then you pick up and you knit the back, you pick up, you knit the front sides, join, and then there's ribbing for the neck and cuffs, and then in the body there's a split hem. This is recommended to be knit with DK weight yarn. I am holding Purl Soho's linen quill yarn double. It is fingering weight yarn that I just absolutely love. It does have alpaca in it, so if you're allergic, maybe not a great choice. It is fine Highland wool, alpaca, and linen, and I've used it in so many projects. In fact, the granny squares are all from previous projects. And then the rosewood pink, I think I had full hanks of on hand, and one maybe from a different dye lot, but it looks pretty close, and since I'm holding things double, I can very easily just marl it in if it looks at all different. But I love how this is looking up. Now, I would have been farther along by now, or maybe even finished. That might be a stretch. I would have been farther along by now, but I tried it on and it was just way too wide. Now I'm going to be making mine shorter than the pattern calls for because I plan on wearing this as more of a slip over situation instead of a regular tee. Just given the fiber content and the weight of it, I would not be wearing this as a tee. And so since I'm cropping it, I don't want it to balloon out too wide. And the smallest size, size 1, is a 39-inch circumference, and the recommended ease is 6 to 10 inches of positive ease. 39 inches would give me 7 inches of positive ease full bust circumference, but like 12 inches of positive ease at my natural waist, and then 4 inches of positive ease at my hips. But mine is not going to get to my hips, so I'm going to need to do some waist shaping to bring it in. Otherwise, it's just going to be way too wide and like have this weird tenty flap in the back, which I don't want. So I ripped back quite a bit and decided that I needed to add some decreases. So I'll do 2 decreases on each side, and then I will get to a certain point where I need to start my ribbing. The split hem in the pattern I think has even amounts in the front and the back, but I'm going to do my back probably 1 inch longer, 1 or 1.5 inches longer, and I might have to switch to the Kiln Red, which is the color that I used for the ribbing in the neck and the cuffs. It's like a brick-ish red, only because the amount I have left of the rosewood pink is not very much, and I'm going to need to use that for the body. I might just knit this until I run out if I do get to the hem, and then finish off whatever I have left with the Kiln Red, because I also don't have enough of the Kiln Red to do all of the ribbing. And so I think it could look kind of fun to have that like color dip of the hem. I'll do as much as I can with the rosewood pink and then finish off with the Kiln Red. I really like the low contrast between this cooler rosewood pink that's a little more mauve and then the warm Kiln Red, which leans a little more brick. I did play with cooler and warmer colors here in this palette, and I love how autumnal it looks. This is something that I envision wearing over like a blue denim button-up shirt, and I can wear it with corduroys. I could wear a turtleneck underneath and wear it with jeans. So yeah, I think this will be a very versatile piece, and I look forward to wearing it this fall. I hope to have it done by the end of July, not because I'll be wearing it in August, but just to have it off the needles because I have other things that I would like to cast on as well. The next project I'm going to share with you is the Weekend Cami by Amy Scher. I can't remember if I shared this with you last time or not. I have a feeling I didn't. I cast it on beginning of June, and I am using a yarn from 2022 Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad, and this is their Bear Paw sock base, which is a 70-20-10 super wash merino yak nylon at 437 yards for 100 grams. And mine started at 109 grams, which is much needed because I will be using probably every single yard of this yarn. To save me some yardage in the main part of the fabric, I used a different color for the I-cord, and this particular garment is finished off in I-cord. I found a mini from November 2022 Sock Squad, which is very similar, and also the Bear Paw base. It is a slightly lighter olivey green. I feel like the main color is more of a mossy, luscious green, and then the I-cord is just slightly lighter. And I love the low contrast there as well. The Progress Keeper here was gifted by Amy from their online shop. They are tea leaves. So this has a V-neck front and a V-neck back. The back is slightly higher than the front. It is meant to be worn with negative ease, and I picked the size A based on upper bust circumference, which is what a lot of Amy's patterns now recommend for picking your size. The gauge is 26 stitches by 37 rounds. Main needle is a US 3, which is a 3.25 millimeter needle, and that is what I am doing. I am just round and round of the body now, so this particular pattern lives in the car or my backpack so that I can knit on it whenever I get a chance. I would love to have this finished by the end of July, but if it doesn't happen, that's okay. August is fine. I probably won't be wearing it in the summer anyway. It is for the other 3 seasons to be layered, and I look forward to wearing it whenever it is done. The next work in progress I'm going to share with you is a pair of socks. I'm using the 2025 July Farmer's Daughter Fiber Sock Squad. That is an annual yarn subscription where each month you receive a set of yarn, so a 100 gram hank plus a 20 gram mini. The colorways are inspired by the Land and She art in this journal. So for July, it is Sights on the Horizon, and the base is the Elkhorn sock base. 80% superwash Punta Arenas merino, 20% nylon, 437 yards for 100 grams. And I am knitting the 2024 August Colorwork Cuff Club motif by Summer Lee Designs. I like to cast on my socks 2 at a time on their own separate needles, and I prefer to use 9-inch circulars. I'll just make a note here because somebody always wants to say how much they don't like 9-inch circulars, and that's totally fine by me. You don't have to like them. There are so many different tools out there for so many different ways to knit, and I think it is amazing when we find a good fit for ourselves. So here are my socks. I am in the gusset portion of the foot. One is slightly farther along than the other one right now, and I love how they look. The teal color is not from this set. The teal color is from a mini in the January 2025 Sock Squad set, and I feel like the teal perfectly pulls out the blues and the main color here. The brown I used in the heel flap and turn, that did come with this month's yarn. And the main color is a warm beige with different shades of blue in the speckling. My preferred sock size is kind of between a small and a medium. If you're saying the standard small is a 56 stitch count and a medium is a 64 stitch count, that's just generally how the patterns number out their sizes, but it doesn't have to be that way. I tend to prefer a 60 stitch count because I like my socks to have negative ease, but I don't want them too tight, and of course I don't want them too baggy. And then my gauge can change depending on the yarn that I'm using. This yarn I find very, very soft. I think it's going to hold up better in a denser gauge than a looser gauge, and so I am using a US 0 or 2 millimeter needle for the main fabric, and then for the color work I went up to a US 1 or 2.25 millimeter. And my color work tends to run on the looser side because I overcompensate, but I still go up a needle size only because for socks, you're going to want that elasticity to be able to fit it over your heel. But if the floats are too tight, then it won't go over your heel. And then if they are too loose, then it can look sloppy. And so I found that the US 1 here, just going up 1 needle size, worked really well in my color work. It still looks very even. My floats are not sloppy. And then I still get a nice dense fabric in the main fabric section where there isn't color work by using the 2mm needle. So this is working out well for me right now, and I think that they will wear really well, but only time will tell for that. So for this one, I cast on the medium size, but went down 1 needle size. These socks fit right in with the Flower Power Make-Along that I mentioned earlier. There are flowers in the color work, and I just think they are so delightful. I would love to finish these by the end of the month. I think I definitely could, because it's just stockinette in the foot portion now. So these are an easy one to knit on the go or on the treadmill or while I'm reading. So I just need to get them done. The last work in progress I want to share with you today is the classic ribbed hat pattern by Jake Canton, written for Pearl Soho. It is a free pattern and it comes in a few sizes. I cast on the adult small size, but I will knit the length to the adult large or whenever I think my yarn might run out. So I am using US 3.25mm needles on a 16-inch cable, and this is what I have so far. I am loving the density of this fabric. It is nice and spongy. The stitches look crisp and the ribbing is not droopy. This color is incredible. It is bright pink. The colorway is called bright pink, or number 108. It is Mondim yarn, and that is by Retrosaria Rosa Pomar. It is a fingering weight 100% Portuguese wool yarn. And it comes in 421 yards for 100 grams. I am holding it double because this pattern is written for DK weight. I have a beautiful tulip progress keeper on here by my friend Yeji. And I just love how it looks together with the hat. This whole project is knit in 1x1 ribbing, and basically I'll just get to a point where I think I need to stop for the crown. I have made probably a dozen of these hats, so I need to check my notes on previous ones to see about how much I need to leave for the crown section, and so that way I will use up as much of the yarn as possible. I'll just knit all the way until that point, and then I'll do the decreases for the crown. I'm probably halfway through the body section of this hat, currently at 10, 20, 30, 40, 43 rounds. I feel like my other ones were knit to like 90 or 100 rounds maybe before I started the crown, something like that. I like to have a nice deep brim, and then also because I cast on for the adult small, I know it's going to stretch a lot more widthwise, or could potentially stretch more widthwise depending on whose head it's fitting, and then it's going to shrink lengthwise, and I want the hats to cover all of the ear and have that extra folded brim to also cover the ear. And so by knitting it as long as possible, I feel like it gets the most use because the brim can be adjusted a little bit more if it wants to be slightly slouchy in the back. But if it's too short, you end up with less ways to wear it and less head circumferences to wear it. So that is what I like to do. I cast them for the adult small or the adult medium, and then I knit to adult large or past. If this is done by end of August, that would be great. No deadline for this, no wool hat wearing right now. So this is just something I can pick up and put on whenever. I need to focus a little bit more when I get to the crown section, but I'm not there yet, so. I have read a few books recently. I just finished A Drop of Corruption, which is the second book in the Shadow of the Leviathan. Is it Leviathan? Leviathan. I can't think of how to say it now. It's this like very scary creature that comes out of the ocean. The book is by Robert Jackson Bennett. The second book was published in April of 2025. It's 480 pages and it's so good. If you are looking for a fantasy mystery, like a fantasy Sherlock Holmes type of book with more unexpected characters, I feel like you might enjoy this one. It's adventurous, it's dark, it's mysterious. I would say it's medium paced, but at parts the pace does pick up quite a bit. I feel like the descriptions are incredible. They are so detailed, but not bogged down. I feel like every word is very intentional and they appeal to all the senses, which really works well in this book based on what the characters do and how they are developed. I'm trying not to give away too much information. I feel like I'm not good at doing book summaries because I'm always worried about having a spoiler, so I just don't do book summaries. Instead, I tell you more about the writing style and what I got out of the book. So I really enjoyed this read. It was one of those that is hard to put down, but at the same time, I feel like I wanted to put it down so that I could savor what just happened and like process what just happened so that I didn't read it too fast and just like skimmed over things. Now it is a mystery, so of course I'm trying to figure things out as I go too, so I definitely didn't want to read it too fast, and I wanted to make sure that I caught all the details just in case I could figure it out. So that is A Drop of Corruption, and I definitely recommend it if you are looking for something that is a little dark and mysterious, but also in a fantasy realm. Okay, I did read other books, but since I didn't write it down, I'm just not going to even try to tell you about it because it's just going to be me fumbling around. So I think that is everything that I had to share with you today. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I hope you are doing well, taking good care of yourselves, your loved ones, and your neighbors, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers to being creative. Bye.